off the bat by Adam Kaplan of SiriusXM. Later, we'll be joined by Steve Weish of NFL Network and ESPN senior writer Jeremy Fowler. But first things first, Adam, what did you think about the breakfast this morning, and how many tables did you jump around to? I didn't see you at Adam Gase's table.
So, Eric, it's interesting. So each year, this is my 17th or 18th owners' meetings, and I'd say probably the last 14 or 15 they started these coaches' breakfasts. Now, what they usually do, they changed it up this year, is you would split up NFC one day, AFC another day. Today, they did it all 32 together, so it made it a little bit more difficult. So what I did is I want to go to see coaches that I have really not sat down with. So I went to Zach Taylor's table, the new Bengals head coach. Great talk with him. He talked to Eric about his philosophy and who he learned the West Coast offense from and his philosophy and what he's going to do with their offense. So I got to talk about that. Talked to Doug Marrone for like a half an hour. He had some great information about his background and his mentors in the game. Did not know that he was coached by, at one point in his playing career, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Jim Mora. I mean, you're talking about Hall of Fame coaches. I didn't know this. I didn't know that about him. So that's the beauty of it. Sure, you could ask the obvious questions. Okay, you got new coaches. What are you going to do there? You're going to have new schemes. I get all that. But I wanted to learn more about the coach, and that's one of the things about coming here, which I'm not going to get if I go to training camp, because you have to worry about everybody else and sort of the tables where the team is not as popular. You got a little bit more time.
We were in the corner, the New York Jets, today. I thought Adam Gase had a highly informative session. And one of the things that stands out, if you're a Jets fan, he said, listen, injuries are a big deal in the National Football League, but I like my pieces, and we should be in the conversation in December. Your thoughts?
Well, that's what you like is when a coach is that confident. One of the things I admire about Gase is he's very, very – you don't want to call him cocky, but he's very, very confident.
Yes.
And he was like that with the Dolphins. He came in there, he had immediate success. He came in here, and I remember doing reporting when I worked at ESPN. He came in, he found the guys he didn't like, he got them off the roster. And that ruffled some feathers. And I remember talking to agents who Gase had, players who he had, and talked to the agents, and the agents were like, hey, the players were complaining, but you know what? He needed to change the culture. And he did, and they had immediate success. Unfortunately, the quarterback got hurt. They had a lot of injuries, and, in the end, Adam left there. Now he's with the Jets, and they've had a very interesting offseason. I mean, really interesting. I think this is a team you're going to be excited about because Adam Gase is a really good play caller and he's a good developer of quarterbacks, and I look to see what he can do that was different than from what happened before here.
So how about the pieces the Jets have surrounded Sam Darnold with? Namely, in free agency, you get Le'Veon Bell, perhaps the most dynamic running back in the National Football League. And then he talked at length today about Jamison Crowder and his explosiveness from the slot position. And you're adding him to a receiver core that already includes Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa. And, oh, by the way, you got Chris Herndon there in the fourth round last year, and he really developed into a nice tight end.
So, let's look at their offense right now. So you mentioned Bell. He comes in, arguably the NFL's best running back, and he didn't play last year, so he's obviously going to be refreshed. He needs to get his timing back, but that's not going to be hard. He's still really young, by the way. Dynamic player, incredible out of the backfield, will block. He's got good size. He's got great vision. He's one of the most interesting players when you watch his tape. Stop and start, finish and vision. He's tremendous. You mentioned Jamison Crowder. So he had a high ankle sprain last year, which put him out for almost 2 months. He tried to come back on. It wasn't right. But you're talking about one of the best slot receivers in the National Football League. Quincy Enunwa, we had on NFL Radio with us last fall, and I asked Quincy about coming back from the neck injury, and then unfortunately got hurt again. He was a great find for the Jets over the years, getting him healthy. He's the one size receiver they have. I would say that's the one thing they could use is size at the receiver position. And then Robbie Anderson, unfortunately, was hurt last season.
Yeah.
He's a dynamic deep threat. You add with Herndon, who's, this kid is explosive. You get him back for year two, he'll be more consistent. So Gase has a lot to work with here. And, offensive line, most of them are back. Carpenter's not, but most of the other guys are back here. So I think getting them in, and he's a new head coach, so they could get the players about 2 weeks early. So he'll get to those guys in early April, actually, basically a week.
April 8th, yeah.
Yeah, a week or so. So he'll get to those guys early. And I look forward to seeing how he implements his offense. And again, as we sum this up, there's a lot to work with here, and that's what you would hope if you're new head coach.
But one of the things that it became apparent today is Gase thinks he can win in the middle of the field if teams are going to be playing zone against this offense because you got Crowder and you got Herndon.
Plus, and don't forget, Nunui, he's capable of lining up at X, Y, or Z because he's sort of this hybrid player. This is why he was able to get on the field earlier in his career because you didn't quite know where they were going to line him up. H-back. He's not a fullback, but an H-back. You can line him up in the slot, and he's a big guy who's high character, hard worker. You line up all of these passing options with Bell out of the backfield. I can't wait to see this offense. I'll be in training camp for sure. In fact, are they having a team in? Or do we know?
We don't know that yet.
I'd be surprised because
you were down there in Richmond last year when the Jets.
You saw me there.
Yeah.
Those fights! Oh my goodness gracious! I remember seeing you. For the viewers out there, so Eric and I and the guys from NewYorkJets.com, we were all watching, and then all of a sudden, and I might have been talking to you. They're coming at me, and I'm like, I might be killed here. So I just jumped. My reflexes at 53 years old are still good.
Yeah.
So I just moved out of the way, and they went against the fence. And the football fights are so meaningless because they're wearing pads.
Yeah.
I was at the famous fights 2 years ago, the Rams and Chargers, at in Cal Irvine. That was not fun, but I love them. I love the combined practices, and I'm hoping that Gase did it. Gase brought his team with the Dolphins down to visit Philly 2 years ago. And those were great practices, so I hope
I always worry about the guys' hands in fights because a lot of the players are keeping their helmets on.
Hit the helmet,
and
sure.
it's a great way to break your hand. A lot of Jets fans like the moves right now, but they're questioning what's happening up front along the offensive line. You mentioned that before. What do you think where they're at right now? Because Gase said, listen, we have to add more bodies. We just don't have the bodies, even not taking shots at anybody up front in terms of anybody who's penciled in there as starters right now. You just need more numbers.
Competition.
Yep.
The competition which Doug Marrone was talking about today in his press gathering. Competition, though, and upgrades, potential upgrades. I think you can't – if you look at the Jets' offensive line talent, it's okay. It's not great. It's okay. You wouldn't mind getting some potential upgrades. So that's something you look at. But the big one, and I've been harping on this if you follow me on Twitter and I've talked about the Jets, there was a running joke that I used to have with the Jets. Oh, Calvin Pace is coming back for his 10th one-year deal because they haven't had edge rushers. Eric, that is the one thing Mike McCagnon's got to do a better job of, get edge rushers because Greg Williams will do a tremendous job. He's a great coach. If you get him help on defense as we transition that side of the football, offense I'm not worried about with Gase calling the plays. I'm not worried about that.
Did you like the addition of Osemele?
Kelechi, unfortunately, was hurt last year.
Right.
I've done a lot of reporting on the Raiders over the years. He's an incredibly strong guy, great leader. He's been hurt. And what can you say? I mean, there was he signed the highest contract in NFL history at guard, and then he unfortunately got hurt a little bit. Still a very good football player. But overall, if Semele gets back to where he was, Eric, before the injuries, you feel good about it.
Two-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah, look, you will see what happens at center. That's a job to me that we'll see what happens. Winters is back, and Beachum is back. Yep. Also, there's nothing wrong with getting younger. The offensive line, the teams that have won the championship, the Eagles have told me this for years. The way that they got better, it started with inside out, not outside in. You always start with a line. It's defensive and offensive, and you work your way back.
All right. Well, I'm glad you just made that transition to the defensive side of the ball because I want to talk about inside out. What do you think about C.J. Mosley, and then behind him you got Jamal Adams?
Yeah, so Mosley's a tremendous football player. He's a leader. He's a high-character guy. My understanding is there were at least 6 teams in it.
Yeah.
The Jets obviously won that one. You don't worry about him. You line him up and you play, and he's going to be great. The safeties with May coming back, and then obviously Adams. And the corner's the one where I get concerned. But you know what? If the pass rush is better, this is what Doug Marrone was talking to me about today when I asked why the defense dropped off a little bit. He goes, look, if the offense does its job and our front four does its job, our secondary is going to be better. So I think, to me, if McCagnon gets more edge rushers, Tremaine Johnson stays healthy, that was obviously an issue last season, everyone's going to be better for it. But it starts up front. That front three is going to be great. I mean, boy, Henry Anderson, I don't think people understand how good this kid is.
And they kept him off the market.
Because remember, he got hurt with the Colts. and you didn't know where his career was going.
They were switching systems.
Yeah, and you never really know when you bring in someone from another team. And, boy, what a great job by McCagnon there and his scouting staff to bring him in, and he did a great job. McClendon and obviously getting Leonard Williams to take the next step. This defense with Williams, let me just tell you, they're going to blitz because this is what Greg believes. And I've covered this guy now for 20 years.
Yeah.
He could have a high school team. They're blitzing. So you know what's coming. You're going to love this. If you thought last year's defense was passive, this is going to be aggressive. So whatever Greg is given, they're going to be better for it because the way, the style of play that he has.
We're taking some Twitter questions. Special installment of Jets 360 Live here at the NFL League meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. Eric Allen joined alongside by Adam Kaplan of SiriusXM. Later we'll be joined by both Jeremy Fowler, senior reporter from ESPN, and Steve Weish, NFL Network reporter. But Adam, John writes in, how do you guys think the Jets will address the remaining needs? Edge, O-line, corner, returner. That's a lot, but let's just stay with a topic that you just touched upon, edge.
Yeah, I think it'll have to be in the draft. Bosa's not going to be there at 3. Not going to happen. He's going to go 1 or 2.
Okay.
Whether it's Josh Allen or somebody else. To me, if you and I sat down, and we put down our needs, to me it's not even remotely close. It's got to be edge rusher. It has to be. They will not be a playoff team until they get edge rushers in here. I don't care how good Darnold's going to be, and I think he's going to be good, and Adams, good coach, and he'll get the offense rolling. It's hard in this league to win consistently without a pass rush, and that's the number one need. Quite frankly, they've got 3 picks in the top 93. I'm going edge rushers 2 out of those 3.
Really?
The Eagles told me the key to their Super Bowl run, having those 4 defensive ends. They run a 43 front, but having that second, their bench strength, they had 4 defensive ends all could rush the passer. I know that in today's NFL it's hard to do to pay everybody, but cap isn't a problem. The ownership is willing to spend money, which is awesome. You cannot have enough pass rushers. This is what Gil Brandt told me. He's going to the Hall of Fame. When I started covering the league, I sat down with Gil. So I was like, how did you, when you ran the Cowboys personnel, how did you put together your value board? He goes, this is it. Quarterback, right defensive end, left offensive tackle, and cornerback. Now, obviously, because you're a 34 defense, it's quarterback, it's outside linebacker in a 34, which they're still running that with Greg, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to run multiple packages, as you know. But
right. So they've got to do that. And if you can't rush the passer, you cannot win in the National Football League because it will help your secondary.
What do you make of Anthony Barr coming to a verbal agreement with the Jets? And this can happen from time to time. And he decided –
I've been through that before as a reporter.
Yeah. He decided he's going to stick with Minnesota. Did you think – he was a good fit for the Jets?
Yes.
A lot of people were saying that maybe he could have been a Swiss Army knife for them, whereas his pass rush numbers don't jump off the chart to you, but Minnesota has used him in a variety of roles.
You know what's interesting about that, Eric, is that when he was drafted at UCLA, the thought around the league was that he'd be better on a 34 front, not a strong side linebacker in a 43. But his length, he's so long, he could cover running back out of the backfield if he gets his hands on him. Would have been a nice player, and he took actually less money to re-sign with the Vikings because that's the only team that he knows. But you live with it. I remember at ESPN we reported Frank Gore. We reported that this is comical. We reported that he actually told people he was going to sign, and then Adam Schefter and I reported that he's not coming.
Right.
But. It does, unless you sign, you can get out of it. And there are usually 2 to 3 in every free agent period that get reported that they're going to sign somewhere and they don't wind up signing. It's no big deal. Quite frankly, I go get it. He's not a great edge rusher. He's a unique player. He's talented.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
But I'd rather get guys who could impact the passer. Once they do that, this is probably going to be a 10-win team. I am convinced that Gase has it going on offense because I've followed his career. He just has he's got a mind for offense, but defensively, Greg Williams is that. Let me tell you something, folks. This will not be. There'll never be a dull moment with this football team this season. Trust me. Next time Eric and I maybe we'll be on a training camp,
Yeah.
And we'll revisit this. I'm telling you, Williams is a riot. I hope you folks get to see him in training camp. He is something to behold.
Darren writes in and wants to know, what do you think about the most underrated signing of free agency so far?
Any team?
You can go Jets and any team.
Any team.
Yeah.
I think acquisition-wise, I think, again, we're just talking free agency, whether it's trade or signing. Philly needed a deep threat. Well, they got the best one in it, maybe in NFL history other than Randy Moss and Deshaun Jackson. When you have a deep threat, that means the defense must account for that with a safety down the field. I think that to me was a great move. It's not going to be underrated because of the enormity of the contract and because Le'Veon Bell is a name that everyone knows. But if he stays healthy, we know injuries have been an issue. If he plays 15 or 16 games, you will be blown away by how special this football player is. He deserved that contract because of everything he can do. He impacts everything in your offense: blocking, running, goal line, situational, third down. Go back in your history with the Jets.
Yeah.
They've had some really good running backs, okay? Even in my lifetime, John Riggins, for those old-timers, over 50. Riggo was not like this.
When I started, I was lucky they had Curtis Martin.
Curtis Martin was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
By the way, Le'Veon Bell's a better football player. I said it. He is. I'm not saying because I'm on your broadcast. Because Le'Veon Bell could do more. And we're talking about Curtis Martin, who's a tremendous football player and a great leader. This guy impacts everything. I can't wait. Because it's funny. I remember at the Combine, I was on a round table for the media, and they said, where do you think Bell goes? I said, 100% Jets. There's no way it won't happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't a secret. Those of us who kind of follow Jets knew that Mike Maccagnan's number one guy was to get this guy because Crowell's not a three-down back. He's just not special. He's probably at this point in his career a good backup. This kid will impact everything. But underrated, I mean, geez, there's so many moves. It's not always the big splash moves. It's the ones sometimes. And by the way, you had a viewer ask a question about what other moves will we see. The Jets will do this because they've got a lot of cap space and still cash to spend. They're going to probably sign a couple players before the draft.
Yep.
That may impact the football team. You go, wow, that was a great signing. Bill Pauling, who I work with at ESPN, told me the best signings are never the first 2 days because the majority of those don't work out unless Bell's an outlier because he's special and he's still young. But there's going to be, it could be a Jermaine Kearse, by the way, who did a nice job. But by the way, Mike traded for 2 years ago right before the season started.
Sure.
Look how well he did for them for a couple of years.
Yep.
Those are the ones you don't see happening, but you know what? They turn out to be very good.
That's Adam Kaplan from SiriusXM. I'm sure we'll be seeing you in the summer. Always great.
Oh, for sure.
Always great catching up. You are watching Jets 360 Live. We are at the NFL League meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to bring in Jeremy Fowler, senior reporter for ESPN momentarily, and then later we'll be joined by NFL Network's Steve Wyche. Very busy day here. I guess you could say this is day 3 of the league meetings. Owners got here on Sunday. There's been meetings throughout. Christopher Johnson addressed the media Sunday. From a Jets perspective, then GM Mike Maccagnan talked on Monday, and then today, Tuesday morning, Adam Gase and the rest of the NFL coaches addressed the media here right outside where we're set up right now. Beautiful day outside, but we're inside, and Jeremy Fowler, senior reporter from ESPN, has stopped on by. Jeremy, of course, follows the Steelers, been covering them for a number of years. It has not been a dull off season, huh?
It's like it's all been put to bed, and I don't know what to do with myself now. It was Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. It was a wild 6 months. A good run.
I don't know. Where should we start? I got to imagine this morning we're with Mike Tomlin.
Yep.
What was the vibe you got from Coach T?
Well, he was pretty definitive in wanting to push everything to 2019. He basically the quote that stuck out to me was, "We all have to look in the mirror, including myself." So he's not absolving anybody from a 9-6-1 season last year, which for them is a failure. First time missing the playoffs since 2013. So, he made clear Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell are no longer here. We have to create a new identity with that. We had plenty of good players without them. We had plenty of good players with them. They'll be fine either way, he feels like. And he was asked a lot about Ben Roethlisberger's leadership, which has come under question from some ex-players. He says he has no problem with his leadership, but he will challenge Big Ben like he will all his players to look in that mirror.
What do Jets fans have to know about Le'Veon Bell that they don't already, because you were inside that locker room for years
Yep.
as this guy was making history.
So I'm trying to think of something different because the play speaks for itself. You know, he is he's a worker. I mean, he really puts the work in. He's similar to Antonio Brown in that way. I don't know if anybody works as hard as Brown. He's kind of on another level. But Le'Veon definitely brings that dynamic, which is why it was so odd to see him sit out because by all accounts and all the talks I've had with him, he does truly love football. He loves to be out there every down. You know, he believes he's an every down back. You know, he's not looking to be a specialist. You know, he's looking to win a Super Bowl. All those things are important to him growing up in Columbus, Ohio, playing in the snow. Like, you know, that's a big part of his identity. So you're not just signing a talent. You're signing somebody who really cares about the game. And his place in the game. You know, he wants to be up there in the record books. You know, he wants to play well into his 30s. He thinks that his style of play will take him into his 30s successfully.
Where do you think that narrative was coming from, where people were questioning his love for the game because he sat out a year? Because, you know, it's interesting your take because you know him better than most, like I said, because you were there daily in Pittsburgh and you saw his commitment to the game.
Yeah, well, I think he just separated the business side of it. And I actually talked to some coaches. I talked to Adam Gase about that, and he said the players he's always talked to when you have, you know, prickly contract situations, it's not a love for the game thing. It's just this really is business at the highest level now. Everything done around here in this entire building is about money in a lot of ways. And so he was able to separate that. And so the you know, missing 1 year of football wasn't going to, you know, it took away a year of his shelf life, so to speak, but it wasn't going to affect his career plans. It just, you know, for him it was a pride issue contractually. You know, the guaranteed money was not there from the Steelers, and that was a big problem for him.
What about the challenge ahead for the Jets offensive linemen? I know they're excited to be blocking for this guy, but you know it. He is so unique and so patient that I guess – I got to figure it's going to take some time for that continuity to develop.
I think so. I've talked to a lot of linemen about that, you know, because there are times, as you know, he'd just stop and sit 2 or 3 seconds behind a line holding the tackle or guard's back. And you're thinking, what are you doing? And really, on paper, some linemen are like, man, you know, why can't we run the ball a little better in some games where you have a guy who's going to hit it 80 yards right through the hole? That's not really him, but he's the guy that when you're done with the game, you say, wow, he just put up 156 yards, kind of sneakily.
Yeah.
But he's, I mean, 2016 comes to mind. There was not a player in the NFL more dominant than him. Just when he really gets it going and is in, you know, the right condition and is feeling out his line and hitting the holes when he needs to, setting up linebackers, and, you know, there's really nobody better. And where he'll help a lot is just as a safety valve. You know, you can get an easy 50, 60 passing yards with him just by him kind of feeling out the field, knowing where to be, those easy dump-offs, and then you can line him up deep. You know, he can run the wheel route. You know, he can do everything you need.
That's what I wanted to ask you is percentage-wise, how much was he targeted, and then how much was it he wasn't the first read? Second read is that he just became the security blanket there.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
A lot of times he was the security blanket, especially in 17. But coming up, you know, his third, fourth year, he was such a good receiver that they would move him all over. I mean, they talked about moving him, you know, line him up out wide and just having him go deep or running some go routes. I mean, they experimented a lot with him. So, you know, he always considered himself a top receiver. You know, he was never really like a number one guy in that area because of his position. But, you know, you can certainly move him all over, you know, but we touched the ball 406 times 2 years ago. So I don't know that he's going to want that workload. I think I don't know if the Jets want him to have that workload.
Yeah.
They might want to manage that. I think he would take it, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Gase was asked about that this morning. He said that you get a good feel for your guys, and he's used multiple running backs in his system.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Le'Veon Bell is going to be the guy here for the Jets, but I think Gase is going to use other guys. I don't know if we're going to see another 400 touch season for him on the horizon.
Right. Yeah, I don't think so.
So, do you think Le'Veon and Antonio Brown have been lumped together here this offseason? Because, yes, they're both out of Pittsburgh now, and they're both outstanding offensive talents, dynamic weapons. But aren't these guys two totally different personalities, and they had two completely different situations?
Yes. Well, right. Their situations are both unique in their own right.
Yeah.
Brown essentially said, okay, I've got 3 years left on a contract, and I want to be a free agent. I want to go get a new deal, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make it happen and get traded. And it was sort of unprecedented that way, the way he did it. Bell's situation was the constraints of the franchise tag, just bothered him. Just on principle. He just didn't like that he was under a, sort of a 1-year contract. He felt like he was a 5-year contract guy, even though the Steelers offered him a big deal. The guaranteed money was such a hang-up for him that he had to move on. But they're similar in some ways. They were pretty good friends, but they, Brown's very emotional. He'll jump out at you and, he'll let you know if he's got an issue or if he's not getting the ball. Bell's a little more subtle. A little quieter, which is probably a little more palatable for a locker room in some ways. So that's kind of how they move. But competitively, they're very similar. I mean, they both want the ball all the time, and they want it now.
What were your thoughts on C.J. Mosley, and also what are the thoughts on Mosley, the player, inside that Pittsburgh locker room? Because you've seen him twice a year for a number of years now.
I mean, his market was huge. I knew it was going to be big. I didn't know it was going to be that big. But he was fortunate to come off of the franchise tag was really lumped into all linebackers, so it was a big number. The Ravens weren't going to go there. So the Jets, kind of walked into a really good staple in the middle of the defense. I mean, he's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. Maybe not the elite speed that some of these smaller linebackers have, but he doesn't really need it. I mean, he's you saw that interception there against Baker Mayfield. That's an athletic play. He can run your defense. He's got the leadership you need. He can stop the run. You feel him when he hits you. And he's still a young guy. I mean, he's one of the best. Alabama's got that tradition of linebackers. He's one of the best that's come around there in a long time, and it's shown in the AFC North.
We're joined right now by Jeremy Fowler, who covers the Steelers for ESPN. In just a moment, Steve Weiss from NFL Network will be on board. Jeremy, it's a month out from the draft, and I know you're looking at it more from a Steelers perspective, but what have you heard about the top of the draft? Because Jets fans are sitting here and saying, well, we're at number 3. Right. Should we look to move out? Mike McCagnon said, I'm open to moving out. What are you going to offer me? He's open for business, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that I've talked to who are very fond of the defensive players up top in this draft.
Right. I mean, if you need front 7 guys, this is the draft. You can get an elite player. But that's the thing. There's good depth there. So if you're Mike McCagnon and you're thinking, you're putting up that for sale sign, which I thought was very clear yesterday. I mean, he put it in neon lights that, hey, Giants, come call me or whoever, maybe move to 6, move somewhere later in the top 10 to 12. You can still get, a monster of a player. The Kentucky edge rusher comes to mind. But, Quinnen Williams is right there at 3 if he's there, or maybe Nick Bosa.
He's a beast. I know a lot of Jets fans don't want to talk about interior defensive players, but Quinnen Williams, the more you hear about this guy, it's hard not to like.
Right. Him or Bosa would be a pretty logical, easy pick in that case. Get a guy who can line up there for the next 8 to 10 years. You'll be in a good spot.
Jeremy, great catching up as always. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
That's Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. You're watching a special installment of Jets 360 Live. We are at the NFL League meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. Awfully busy day. Adam Gase spoke to the media earlier this morning, as did every NFL coach in our session. And it's really it's a unique day here at the league meetings, because this is not a time where you often have an opportunity to sit down with a head coach in a formal setting like that for so long. But without further ado, let's bring in Steve Weish. Great to see
My
you.
man, how's everything going?
Impeccably dressed as always.
That was a quick change, though. I mean, me and Jeremy Fowler really,
Yeah.
we made that, easy transition.
Yeah,
But
well,
thank you for the compliment.
You guys are professionals.
That's how we make it happen.
So, what storylines are jumping out to you this week here?
Well, I mean, of course, there's a lot of the conversation about the officiating, reviewing non-calls as we saw in the NFC Championship game, or reviewing the pass interference, OPI, DPI.
You think anything happens?
It's going to be interesting to see, because a lot of times when you have very thoughtful proposals, they'll table the discussion here and they'll move it down to the next owners meeting. The thing about that is the coaches aren't around to push those agendas. And right now the coaches are really pushing it. Like, we're here, listen to us, owners and competition committee. And when they go to the May meetings, it's just the owners. So they don't have anyone in their ear. So we'll see. I don't know if anything's going to come out of that right now, because, again, there's a lot of thoughtful things around that discussion.
Yeah.
And, of course, some of the other subjects here, of course, what the Jets are doing. I mean, Lev Bell, some of the offseason additions, Adam Gase coming in. I can't wait to go to a practice there, just because, man, the coach, the personas of the coaches, it's going to be spectacular. And then, the Giants as well, trading Odell Beckham. What is the plan? What is the blueprint? So it's typical NFL. I mean, there's so many storylines, there's so many teams, the insatiable appetite that fans have for the NFL, with the draft coming up, all the intrigue. What's Arizona going to do? Are they going to trade Josh Rosen? Are they going to take Kyler Murray? So this is the NFL every year, and that's why it never gets old, right? We've been doing this for a while. It never gets old.
Did you like the hire of Adam Gase?
I love it. I think he's got a real good personality in terms of leading guys. He's very straight with guys. Yeah. I've had conversations with him where he says, look, here's some things that I could do better. So he's going to take the experience of what happened in Miami. He's going to improve on maybe how he treats players or speaks to players or speaks to whomever. He'll improve on that. Offensive-minded coach, but, not someone who's going to say, okay, I'm that whiz kid you guys aren't talking about. He's going to fit his personnel. Now he's got a fantastic toy in Lev Bell who can run it. Who can play receiver. Like, I've got a chip I haven't had before.
Yeah.
Let's see what I can do. So I think him getting this opportunity, knowing what people around the league say about him, like he can really coach. Let's see, if this is another opportunity where he can finally succeed.
What do you think about Sam Darnold, his rookie season? Really flourished down the stretch, coming back from injury. His guy, Josh McCown, might not be back. The Jets picked up Trevor Siemian in free agency, and it appears to be he will be the backup quarterback. But Adam Gase said today we'll keep lines of communication open with Josh McCown.
As they should.
But what do you think about Darnold, who is just going to turn 22 in June?
How about that? I was a big fan of Sam Darnold at USC. Yeah. I mean, everyone talks about this. The way he would move the ball down the stretch. Like, he would make mistakes like in the third quarter or whatever. But the way he would play down the stretch, the way he could run it, the way he could throw it, he's your prototype. This is the guy you want. Now he's working with a guy like Adam Gase, who's going to take him and refine him. That second year we see, quarterbacks either stall because of the film teams have on, which isn't going to be the case because he's changing offenses.
Right.
Or they make that significant leap, which I think will be the case as long as they can protect him. But having Lev Bell back there, Jamison Crowder, I mean, there are some pieces now that have been put around a young quarterback, which is usually the successful method teams use. Get a run game, protect him, and get a defense that's going to get takeaways. Okay, they may give up yards, but a defense that's going to get takeaways. Greg Williams' defense get takeaways.
That's what they did in Cleveland last year.
They get takeaways. So that's, look, if they add another pass rusher, if they add – they're very big, of course, at getting the quarterback to get the ball out of his hands quickly, off-time type defense. Greg Williams gets off the bus blitzing. That's the old analogy of him.
That's right.
So it's they're putting the pieces around Darnold to put him on the track to succeed. And that's when you see that blueprint, that's something that should give everybody optimism. A large part of what happens from here on is going to be on him.
So you live in California. You saw that jump yourself from Jared Goff and Sean McVay, a new head coach taking over, a quarterback in his second season. Last year we saw Chicago. Matt Nagy comes to town. They add some pieces around Mitch Trubisky. If you're a Jets fan, can you look at those two examples and say, why can't that be us?
Those are prime examples. Those are great examples of one. It wasn't just when let's speak specifically to the Rams. It wasn't just Sean McVay fixing Jared Goff. It was Sean McVay fixing the offense. What had happened the year before was just dreadful.
Yeah.
Not one player on that offense looked like he could play. Well, the following year, Roger Saffold, the left guard, looks like he's an all-pro player. Andrew Whitworth comes in, played the best football of his career. So they put together a staff that really worked in harmony where everybody succeeded, which in turn helped the quarterback succeed in a system that's very quarterback-friendly. But when you've got a dual-threat running back like Todd Gurley is, as his left bell is, that helps. You can move pieces around. You can scheme defenses. Okay, let's pull a safety out here with the running back. Now the field is open so my quarterback can see it better. So those are the things you saw with Sean McVay and Jared Goff. It wasn't so much, okay, I'm doing this, and this. It's like I've got this type of personnel now. I can use all my pieces to function effectively, and that's what makes the quarterback better, and that's what Adam Gase can bring to Sam Darnold.
Do you sense the excitement from Gase? Because he said, I've never been in this position before where I get my hands on a quarterback who is so young. We know what he did with Ryan Tannehill. That first year in Miami, people often forget this in terms of Gase. They won 10 games that first year, and they made the wild card round. And when Tannehill was healthy, he didn't play his second year either. But I'm not comparing Darnold to Tannehill. But do you sense this the reinvigoration from Gase, even at just 43 years in with Miami? Now he's got a new head coaching job, but he's looking at Sam Darnold, and he's got a new toy.
Yeah, I mean, there's an absolute reinvigoration, and this happens for most coaches who get a second chance because none of us want to say, boy, was it me or what? To have any self-doubt at the first time. So I've got to do some things to help. And then when you've got this super talented quarterback at your premier position, a humble guy who wants to be better, of course, this is going to play to my strengths, and I've got a piece of moldable clay that I'm going to let him do his thing. I'm just going to help him along the way, and then management's giving me these pieces to help me succeed. They're giving me the formula. So it's either everything's going to be on me or whatever, but I think Adam Gase is like, I like the fact that I'm getting this opportunity to do some things with some varied pieces that, again, could put me on the right track. And again, the staff he's put together.
Yeah.
That's highly important as well. And I think some of the people he's put on his staff, they've been there before. I mean, Greg Williams has been through these situations. He was with the Rams when they were terrible. The defense carried them all those years, even though they were only winning 6 games. And then he was there, to see the transition to success before with some other teams. So I just think the staff he's put together is another huge part of what the Jets are doing. They're doing it the right way.
Greg Williams, you said you were there, right there in Cali. He was working with the Rams, did some fine things
Saints.
there. And then he also, you look at his experience in Cleveland, taking over as the interim head coach of that team. 5-3 down the stretch.
Yep.
Did some very fine things there. Is he a perfect pairing with Gase? Because Gase said, when I'm looking for a defensive coordinator, I want somebody who is the head coach of the defense.
That's a great point. And Greg is one of my favorite people in the business.
Yeah?
He has got personality for days. I love the man. And this is going back to his days in Washington, New Orleans. I'll never forget an example of this, and this was at a Rams minicamp practice. And defensive players, it might have been a training camp because I think they were hitting a little bit. And the defensive players were really roughing up the wide receivers and whatnot. And the wide receivers are like, hey, man, it's not supposed to be that type of practice. Greg gathers up the defense in the end zone and screams at the top of his lungs, if I see one of you guys backing off these offensive players when they want to lay down and be babies, then I'm fining you or I'm cutting you. If they don't want to play, that's on them. We're going to make ourselves better, right? So then the offensive players are like, whoa. And it just showed his mindset, like, we are here to make each other better in practice. And if we got guys who don't want to get better, then I don't want to be part of it. And that's what Greg Williams is about. I mean, this is, I'm telling you, you're going to love watching this guy run a practice. You saw even the highlights on Hard Knocks last year when I think it was Todd Haley who says, "Hey, keep your hands off the quarterback," and Greg's like, "Well, why don't you block him?" Okay, you're going to have a whole lot of those incidents at practice, and it's going to create a lot of spirited competition.
Do you like the alpha dogs on defense too? Because Jamal Adams is coming
Stud,
into his own, right?
C.J. Mosley.
And then C.J. Mosley.
Spectacular. I mean, they're going to add people in the draft.
Right.
You got Leonard Williams.
Yep.
Alpha dogs in their own right in
Yeah.
terms of you never heard C.J. Mosley on this great Baltimore defense to say, "I should be the alpha dog." He just played his way. You know, he let Terrell Suggs and Weddle and Zadarius Smith be the bosses, but he was the guy who was just a cleanup man, who did
Right.
everything so well. You know, Jamal, okay, just a spectacular player. And back to Greg Williams, he's always had a great safety. Everywhere. Think about his days in New Orleans when he had Roman Harper and Darren Sharper. These guys were laying people out. They were getting interceptions, getting a lot of tape. Jamal Adams is going to love this guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if Marcus May comes back healthy,
Correct.
That's going to be a big acquisition
Great
just
point.
by having him healthy.
And he does a lot of things with the safeties. So there are things. So the alpha dog on the defense is going to be Greg Williams. Okay, but he's going to make sure that he may be the alpha dog, but he's got 11 alpha 1 dogs on there that everybody is a dog. I mean, there are going to be no puppies on that field. If you want to come up and you don't want to bark loud and scare somebody, you're not going to play.
Okay, how can we follow you this week on NFL Network and also throughout your social?
Yep. You can get me on
Yeah.
Twitter and Instagram at Wyche89,
Yep.
WYCHE, and the number's 89. And I will be on varied programming up to the minute, total access on NFL Network.
Awesome. And then my final question, what do you think about the 4th and 15 proposal as far as instead of the onside kick, I guess? That's one of the proposals out there late in the game where, as opposed to an onside kick, teams might have the option to go for it on 4th and 15.
Personally, I love it.
You do?
Now, I mean, look, it'll be just fun. It'll make you think about it, but this is why it'll probably get tabled, if not until the May meetings, until next year. A lot of what ifs. Okay, so they're using this in the AAF.
Yes.
But you have to be down 17 points, I believe, or more to use it. Now, is that going to be the situation if they bring it in the NFL? Because apparently one of the questions that's been asked is, okay, suppose you have a lead, you're up by 7, 5 seconds left in the game. Does the clock start when you take a snap, and can you just have your quarterback run around for those 5 seconds, take any game over?
Yeah.
Okay, these are scenarios. I mean, there's a million of these scenarios they want to run through.
Right.
So that's why I don't think anything happens here. But can you imagine the absolute fun? Okay, if you're up by 3 and you've got 2 minutes left, and as a coach, you're saying to yourself, do I want to give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers with that much time, or Drew Brees or Ben Roethlisberger with that much time? Or am I going to take a shot? You know, and if I don't make it, you know, they get the ball in the 35 or whatever.
Right.
I think it's tremendously exciting. Again, but I just think right now there's a lot of great conversation around it, but I don't think it's necessarily headed anywhere at these meetings. Again, might get pushed down the line.
All right, we're going to have to see how it all plays out. Very appreciative of your time.
Oh, anytime, man.
Awesome.
I'm telling, and enjoy Greg Williams at practice, man. It's a treat. It's a treat.
Great to see you as always. Special thanks to Adam Kaplan from SiriusXM, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, and of course, the aforementioned Steve Wyche. We are signing off from Arizona.